Today I'm going to walk you through what's arguably going to be one of the most popular issues that you're going to have in your home: how to fix a drywall hole. So we had a couple of holes punched in the wall a couple of weeks ago when we had our recessed lighting put in. So we had a wire that ran all the way down this wall. So you can see back in here, we have a wire, but it left a couple of holes. So today I want to walk you through the process of how we fill those holes. For this project, you'll need drywall, a utility knife, a saw if necessary for cleaning up your edges, a measuring tape or ruler depending on the size of your project, a pencil, drill, drywall screws, extra wood that will be at least 2 inches longer than your hole, drywall tape, joint compound, a putty knife, and fine sandpaper, 120 to 150 grit. Now, a couple of different things to note before we get started. Number one, there are different kinds of joint compound. There's a dry version, which is kind of like a fine sandy powder, and then there's a wet version. If you're just starting out, I would strongly recommend going with the wet version, which is gonna look like this, if I can lift it. It's gonna come in a tub, and there's little or no work for you to do in order to start using it. The dry powder form is gonna dry faster once you get it on the wall, but it also involves you mixing it by hand, and it's gonna dry a lot faster even when you're still putting it on the wall, so you have to work a lot faster. Today, we're just gonna use the wet stuff. I don't really feel like mixing it, so it's gonna be a lot easier for me. Plus, we don't have a ton to do, so I didn't wanna go through the process of having to dirty an extra container just to wash it out later. So another thing to consider is there are multiple types of drywall tape. There's this paper type, and then there's also this adhesive mesh type. I'm going to use both today so you can see how both of them are used. Traditionally, I think this is the one that most construction crews use, the paper. This one is a little bit more user-friendly, but is a little bit more expensive too. So we'll use both because they have a slightly different application to them, and you can see how both work. Now, I know this seems like a lot of equipment, and you're right, it is. It's really not as complicated as this makes it look. It's just a lot of simple steps that require a lot of different elements in order to do them. But I do want to make a point that there are certain items that you might think that we can pass on, and we really just can't. Things like the extra wood and the drywall tape, you might think, oh, I could just patch over it and it's going to be fine, but it is really important that you use these different items. So number one, why do we have the wood? The wood is going to be used as a backing behind the drywall, and that way when you're going to spackle or any kind of support or pressure that you put on that new piece of drywall, it's going to hold it in place because it's going to be anchored on the sides and around it from the old existing drywall. The tape is going to be super important because this is what's going to allow it to kind of flex and move with the existing drywall that's already there. So we're essentially taping the old drywall to the new drywall and then spackling over it. If you didn't have it, anytime there was a shift in the house, or if somebody accidentally ran into a wall, then this would be what's kind of holding it all together so the two pieces aren't moving interchangeably and you don't get that crack where the seam is. Okay, so I'm gonna start by placing my wood in the hole. I was only going to use one piece, which I could probably get away with, but just to be safe, because it is a little long, I'm going to use 2 here and here. And the easiest way to start is by taking a drywall screw and drilling it into the center of the wood, and that's going to give you a handle in order to start with. So now we can work it in, have something to hold on to, and hold it in place. Okay, so first we're gonna go ahead and drill these in. And you want the screw to be just a little bit into the drywall, not too far, or you'll end up cracking the drywall. You can take this screw off. There we go. I'll just let that sit there for now while we prep our other screws. And it's just a lot easier to put the screws in ahead of time. That way you're not trying to hold onto too many things at once, or you don't have to rely on a second person to help you. Now, once the wood is nice and secure, we can go ahead and cut our drywall. Cutting drywall is actually very simple. Once I measure how large my square needs to be, I draw that out on my drywall. Then all you have to do is take your knife and cut along the lines. I usually go over each line twice. Then bend the drywall away from the cut and it will snap. Finally, just go back and score the back side of your drywall and you're done. Now we just have to make sure the drywall fits and screw it in. If it doesn't fit, you can take your knife or your saw and just trim it down a bit until it fits snug. Then just screw it into those wood pieces you installed. Once our drywall is screwed into the wall, I'm going to grab our tape. For this first hole, we'll be using the mesh tape, which has an adhesive on the back. The paper tape does not. Apply the tape by lining it up along the seam of the new and old drywall. Use your putty knife to press the tape down and secure it in place. Then add your joint compound on top. For the paper tape, you're going to need to have your joint compound ready to go. Since there's no adhesive, you'll spread a thin layer of compound first and lay the paper tape on top of that. Then lightly cover the paper with another layer. Now you're ready to slather this thing with joint compound. So now that we have the first layer on, we're going to wait for it to dry, and then we're going to continue to do a couple more thin layers. The thinner the layer, the quicker it's going to dry. So you really want to keep those layers thin, and it's also going to make it easier to sand down later to make sure it's all smooth. Once it's all smooth, then we get to paint and we're all done. Thank you so much for watching. Stay tuned to this channel for more how-tos, and if there's anything that you'd like to learn, leave me a message in the comments. And next time you patch a hole, be sure to tag us at Our How To Home on Facebook or Instagram. See you guys later.